I'm Ashley Moore, 38 years old, and I spent my entire life being the shadow to my older brother's spotlight. Growing up in Millbrook, Colorado, I watched Mason Moore get every bit of praise while I scrambled for scraps of attention. Our parents, Carol and Frank Moore, treated Mason like their golden child while I became the afterthought they tolerated. Every achievement I made got brushed aside with comments like, "Mason did that when he was younger," or "Why can't you be more like your brother?" I stayed loyal anyway, hoping one day they'd see my worth. I helped Dad with his plumbing business, covered for Mason's mistakes, and never complained when family dinners became Mason appreciation sessions. But deep down, resentment grew like poison in my chest. The worst part wasn't the favoritism. It was how they made me believe I deserved less. Every birthday, every holiday, every milestone became another reminder that I was the spare son, the backup plan they never wanted to use. Still, I kept trying to earn their love, thinking if I worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, they'd finally choose me too. Mason's wedding to Alyssa Clark was supposed to be perfect, and I threw myself into making it happen. For months, I handcrafted decorations, spending nights in my garage building centerpieces from scratch. I wanted this to be my gift to him, proof that I could contribute something meaningful to our family. Carol constantly criticized my work, saying things like, "Mason would have done this better," or "Don't embarrass us with amateur stuff." Frank barely looked at what I was doing, just grunted approval when Carol pushed him to comment. The day before the wedding, I carefully loaded 20 boxes of decorations into my truck, each one representing hours of work and hope. But when I got to the venue, disaster struck. One box was missing. I'd left it at home in my rush. It was a simple mistake, the kind anyone could make after months of pressure and sleepless nights. But when I called Carol to explain, her voice turned ice cold. "You always ruin everything, Ashley. Always." The words hit harder because they carried years of accumulated disappointment. Frank got on the phone next, his voice flat and final. "You know what? Maybe it's better if you just don't come tomorrow. Save us all the embarrassment. You're dead to us anyway," Carol added before hanging up. Those 4 words shattered something inside me that had been cracking for years. I sat in my truck outside the venue, hands shaking, feeling like that unwanted kid all over again. 38 years of trying to matter, and they'd finally said what I'd always feared they thought. I drove home in a daze, the missing box sitting on my kitchen counter like evidence of my failure. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment of rejection, every time they'd chosen Mason over me, every birthday where his gifts cost more than mine. The wedding was tomorrow, and I wasn't invited to my own brother's celebration. So I did what any heartbroken person would do in 2024. I found the live stream. A family friend was broadcasting it on social media, and I watched my family celebrate without me. Carol wore the dress I'd helped her pick out. Frank walked Mason down the aisle with pride I'd never seen directed at me. They looked happier, lighter, as if my absence had lifted some burden from their shoulders. The camera panned across the reception, showing my empty chair removed like I'd never existed. That's when something dark awakened inside me. Watching them toast Mason's happiness while erasing me completely, I felt my grief transform into something much more dangerous: calculation. They wanted me dead to them. Fine. But dead men can haunt the living in ways they never expect. I spent that night planning, my laptop glowing as I researched everything I'd need to disappear properly. Not just leaving town, but vanishing in a way that would let me watch their world crumble from the shadows. They'd taught me I was worthless, but they were about to learn the value of what they'd thrown away. I thought about every slight, every moment they'd made me feel invisible, every time Mason got credit for my ideas at the family business. The anger burned clean and cold, sharpening my focus. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to make them understand exactly what it meant to lose me. They wanted Ashley Moore dead? He would be. But what rose from those ashes would be their worst nightmare. I closed my laptop as the sun came up, already feeling like a ghost preparing to haunt the people who'd buried me alive. Within a week, I'd sold my house to a cash buyer for $20,000 under market value. Speed mattered more than money. I cleaned out the joint accounts I'd been contributing to for years, money Dad used for business expenses and Mom used for her shopping trips. The law was clear. Joint accounts meant equal access, and I took exactly half. Let them try to explain to the bank why the dead son had withdrawal rights. I packed one suitcase with clothes and another with the most important thing: years of family documents, business records, and photos I'd digitized. Every embarrassing moment, every private conversation, every family secret was now mine to use. Phoenix, Arizona became my destination, far enough from Colorado to disappear, but close enough to monitor what happened next. I rented a small apartment under my real name first, then gradually built a new identity. Ashley Moore was about to become a ghost story, but ghosts, I learned, can be very busy spirits. I set up new email accounts, created fake social media profiles, and established contact with old family friends who'd stay loyal to me. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was pretending to be broken when I'd never felt more focused in my life. Phoenix treated me better in 3 months than Colorado had in 38 years. I used my marketing skills to freelance under the name Andrew Miller, and clients actually appreciated my work. No one compared me to a golden child here. No one made me feel worthless for existing. But I wasn't hiding, I was hunting. Every morning, I'd check my family's social media like a detective gathering evidence. Carol posted constantly about her 2 boys, always featuring photos of just Mason and Frank. It was like I'd been edited out of history, which was exactly what I needed them to believe. Mason shared updates about married life, while Frank posted about the plumbing business I'd helped build. They were all moving on, probably sleeping better without the disappointment of Ashley around. What they didn't know was that their discarded son had become something much worse, an invisible enemy with intimate knowledge of their weaknesses. I mapped out their lives. Carol's church activities and social circles, Frank's business partnerships and financial habits, Mason's new marriage and career ambitions. They'd made me feel powerless for decades, but now I held all the power. The best part? They had no idea the ghost of Ashley Moore was about to become very, very real. 2 months after I vanished, Carol made her first mistake. She posted on Facebook, telling everyone that her ungrateful son had abandoned the family and stolen their savings. She painted herself as the victim, claiming I'd run off like a thief after they'd given me everything. The lies burned, but they also gave me ammunition. I'd kept perfect records of every contribution I'd made to those joint accounts, every business expense I'd covered, every time I'd bailed out Mason's failed investments. Carol wanted to play victim? I'd give her a masterclass in real victimhood. I contacted a lawyer in Denver, James Crawford, and had him send a formal letter to Carol documenting exactly how much I'd contributed to their accounts over the years. The letter made it clear that if she continued spreading false information about theft, I'd be forced to pursue legal action for defamation. Crawford was thorough, including bank statements and receipts that proved I'd actually been supporting them, not stealing from them. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, Carol's Facebook post was deleted, but screenshots live forever. I'd saved every lie she'd told, every public attack on my character. She wanted to destroy my reputation? I'd collected the evidence to destroy hers instead. While monitoring their social media, I discovered something beautiful: hypocrisy in high definition. Mason and Alyssa posted constant photos of expensive dinners, designer clothes, and luxury vacations, but I knew the truth about Mason's finances from our shared business dealings. He was drowning in debt, living on credit cards and loans while pretending to be successful. Meanwhile, Carol started a GoFundMe page claiming the family was struggling after my abandonment. She begged for money to cover basic expenses, playing the heartbroken mother whose son had left her destitute. The contradiction was perfect: Mason flashing wealth while mom begged for charity. I started documenting everything, building a file of their public lies versus private truths. Mason's Instagram showed a Rolex while Carol's GoFundMe claimed they couldn't afford groceries. Alyssa posted about spa days while my mother asked strangers for utility bill help. They were scamming their own community, using my disappearance as an excuse to crowdfund their lifestyle. That's when I decided they needed to meet the consequences of their choices. If they wanted to play victims, I'd give them something real to cry about. Frank's construction business had always operated in gray areas, and I knew exactly where the bodies were buried. From my years of helping with paperwork, I'd seen him underreport income, pay workers cash to avoid taxes, and cut corners on safety inspections. He thought his secrets were safe because family kept quiet. But I wasn't family anymore. I was dead to them, remember? I typed up an anonymous letter detailing specific instances of tax evasion and safety violations, including dates, amounts, and witness names. Then I mailed it to the IRS, the state labor department, and the local building inspector. I didn't sign it, didn't leave fingerprints, didn't create any trail back to Phoenix. Just a concerned citizen reporting potential fraud. The beauty of anonymous tips is that once they're filed, investigations have their own momentum. Within a week, Frank got his first audit notice. By the end of the month, inspectors were showing up at his job sites. I watched from 1,500 miles away as my father's reputation crumbled one violation at a time. The man who'd called me worthless was about to learn what real failure looked like. And this was just the beginning. Carol's church reputation was her pride and joy, so naturally, that's where I struck next. Over the years, I'd saved family text messages where she gossiped about church members, calling them fat hypocrites and fake Christians. She'd mocked the pastor's wife for her weight and laughed about other families' financial struggles. In private, Carol Moore was mean and judgmental, but she played the perfect Christian woman in public. Time to introduce her two faces to each other. I created a fake Facebook profile using stock photos and a generic name, then joined Millbrook community groups. Slowly, carefully, I began sharing screenshots of Carol's old texts, always anonymously, always without context that could trace back to me. Does anyone else remember Carol Moore saying this about the Jensen family? I'd post, attaching her cruel comments about their autism diagnosis. I wonder if Pastor Williams knows what Carol really thinks about his sermons, followed by her texts calling him boring and clueless. Each revelation was small but devastating. Her church friends began questioning everything they believed about her character. The woman who'd lectured me about Christian values was exposed as a gossip and a hypocrite. Her perfect reputation started cracking, one leaked message at a time. The church scandal exploded faster than I'd expected. Carol tried damage control, claiming someone had hacked her phone and fabricated the messages. But I had timestamps, conversation threads, and responses from other family members that proved authenticity. When she denied calling Mrs. Patterson a fat cow who ate her husband to death, I posted Mason's reply laughing at the comment. When she claimed the messages about Pastor Williams were fake, I shared Frank's response agreeing that the sermons were God's cure for insomnia. Her own family betrayed her with their digital footprints. The church community was small and tight-knit, and nothing spread faster than religious gossip. Women who'd once invited Carol to Bible study started avoiding her calls. The choir director quietly asked her to step back from singing duties. Even the pastor's wife stopped acknowledging her presence. Carol's social media went dark for 2 weeks, and when she returned, her posts were desperate pleas for forgiveness and understanding. She'd gone from church pillar to community pariah in under a month. But I wasn't done with her yet. This was just the foundation for what came next. Frank's audit turned into a full investigation when they found the first major discrepancy. He'd been claiming his mother's medical expenses as business deductions, while Grandma Moore had been dead for 5 years. The IRS doesn't appreciate creativity with dependent deductions, especially when the dependent is decomposing. I knew about this because I'd warned him it was illegal when he first started doing it. He'd laughed and said the government would never catch on. Turns out dead people leave paper trails that eventually get cross-referenced. The investigation expanded to include payroll fraud when they discovered workers getting paid in cash without proper tax withholding. Frank had saved money by cheating the system, but now faced penalties worth more than he'd ever saved. His business license got suspended pending review, and word spread fast in the construction community. Clients canceled contracts, afraid of being associated with tax fraud. Suppliers demanded cash up front instead of extending credit to someone under federal investigation. I watched Frank's empire crumble through local news reports and social media updates from Millbrook residents. The man who'd built his reputation on being trustworthy was now seen as just another contractor trying to cheat the system. Mason's perfect marriage began showing cracks when Alyssa discovered his real financial situation. I'd been feeding information to her slowly, anonymously, through fake social media accounts. Screenshots of Mason's credit card statements showing gambling debts. Photos of him at a casino when he'd told her he was working late. Bank records showing loans he'd hidden from her. The evidence painted a picture of a man living completely beyond his means while lying to his wife about money. Alyssa wasn't stupid. She just hadn't known the truth. When she did, The fairy tale marriage started looking like a nightmare. I watched their social media presence change from a couple's vacation photos to separate activities. Mason stopped posting about date nights. Alyssa quit mentioning him in her Instagram stories. The luxury lifestyle photos disappeared, replaced by Alyssa hanging out with single friends and Mason posting gym selfies at 2 a.m. Their wedding had been picture perfect, but marriages built on lies don't last long when the truth comes out. I'd given Alyssa the gift of honesty about who she'd married. What she did with that information was her choice, but I had a feeling Mason was about to learn what real loneliness felt like. Millbrook's opinion of the Moore family shifted like a landslide. Carol went from respected church member to community gossip. Frank transformed from trusted businessman to suspected criminal. Mason's reputation changed from successful young man to debt-ridden gambler. The family that had once been pillars of the community became cautionary tales about false appearances. I monitored local Facebook groups and neighborhood apps, watching neighbors discuss my family's fall from grace. Did you hear about Carol Moore's texts? Frank's company got shut down for tax evasion. Mason Moore's wife is asking about divorce lawyers. The conversations would have hurt once, but now they filled me with satisfaction. They'd spent decades making me feel worthless, and now their own community was questioning their worth. The best part was how they kept mentioning my disappearance as if it had cursed them. Ever since Ashley left, everything's gone wrong for that family. Maybe they shouldn't have treated their son so badly. I'd become a ghost story in Millbrook, the prodigal son whose absence brought divine justice. They wanted me dead to them, but I'd become more powerful as a memory than I'd ever been in person. Carol's birthday arrived in November, and I decided she deserved a special gift. I'd kept our old family photos from before I disappeared, including the ones displayed in their living room. Using photo editing software, I carefully removed myself from a large family portrait, the same one that hung above their fireplace. Then I had it professionally printed and framed, creating a perfect replica of their family with Ashley Moore erased. I mailed it to their house with no return address, just a note. Here's the family photo you always wanted. Happy birthday, Mom. The timing was perfect because I knew Carol would be feeling isolated after her church scandal. Getting a reminder that she'd erased her own son would twist the knife exactly where it needed to go. I imagined her opening the package, seeing her wish fulfilled in the cruelest way possible. They'd wanted me dead to them, and here was proof of what that looked like. A family portrait with a ghost-shaped hole where love used to be. The gift would sit in her house like a guilty conscience, reminding her every day that some words can't be taken back. Some choices echo forever. Christmas brought desperation to my family's door. Mason called my old phone number, which I kept active just to monitor their attempts to reach me. His voicemail was a masterpiece of panic. Ashley, I know you're angry, but Mom's really sick and Dad's business is falling apart. We need you to come home. We need your help. His voice cracked with emotion he'd never shown when I lived there. It was funny how I'd become valuable only after I was gone. I let him leave 3 more messages before I responded with a single text. You told me I was dead to you. Dead people can't help the living. His reply came immediately. That was Mom, not me. Please, we're family. I sent back a photo of the edited family portrait, the one with me removed. This is your family. I'm not in it anymore. Mason's responses became increasingly frantic. He offered money, apologies, and promises that things would be different. But I'd heard those promises my whole life, and they'd always been broken when Mason needed the spotlight back. The difference was that now I held all the power, and I was learning to enjoy watching them beg for something they'd thrown away. Frank's construction company officially died in January when the IRS placed a tax lien on all his business assets. 23 years of building a reputation vanished in one legal document. But I wasn't satisfied with just watching. I wanted him to know who'd brought his empire down. Through my lawyer James Crawford, I filed a civil lawsuit claiming Frank had misappropriated funds from the joint accounts we'd shared. I accused him of using money I'd contributed for personal expenses rather than the family emergencies we'd agreed on. The lawsuit was public record, meaning every detail of our family's financial dysfunction became available for anyone to read. Local newspapers picked up the story about the missing son suing his father for theft. The irony was perfect. They'd accused me of stealing when I left, and now I was accusing them of stealing while I lived there. The court documents included bank statements showing exactly how much I'd contributed to their household over the years, proving I'd been supporting them, not the other way around. Frank's reputation went from tax evader to family thief, and everyone in Millbrook got to read about it in black and white. Alyssa finally filed for divorce in February, and I made sure the court documents became very public. Through my network of fake social media accounts, I shared the legal papers that detailed Mason's hidden debts, secret gambling habits, and financial lies. The documents painted a picture of a marriage built on deception, with Mason hiding over $60,000 in credit card debt and personal loans. I'd been feeding Alyssa information for months, but seeing it all compiled in legal paperwork made the betrayal feel more real. Mason had been living like a millionaire on borrowed money while lying to his wife about their true financial situation. The divorce papers also mentioned his gambling addiction, something I discovered through his credit card statements from our shared business accounts. Mason had been betting money he didn't have while playing the role of successful husband. Alyssa kept their shared home, their car, and most of their assets since she could prove Mason had fraudulently hidden debts. Mason went from married homeowner to divorced renter in under 60 days, and everyone in Millbrook got to watch it happen through court documents and social media updates. Carol's public breakdown happened during Easter service at Millbrook Community Church. I wasn't there, but 3 different people posted videos on social media, and the clips went viral within hours. During the pastor's sermon about forgiveness and redemption, Carol suddenly stood up and started screaming about her cursed family and her dead son who haunted them. She blamed me for every terrible thing that had happened, saying I'd put a curse on them when I disappeared. She ranted about ghost children who punish ungrateful parents, and how God was using my spirit to destroy their lives. The congregation sat in shocked silence as this woman they'd once respected completely lost her grip on reality in front of everyone. Security had to escort her out while she screamed that I was watching them through the internet, controlling their lives from beyond the grave. The videos were shared thousands of times with captions like, "Religious woman has a complete meltdown during church service." Carol became a viral meme, the crazy church lady who thought her living son was haunting her. It was better than any revenge I could have planned. She destroyed herself more thoroughly than I ever could have. Frank lost their family home to foreclosure in May. 27 years of mortgage payments meant nothing when the IRS seizes your assets and your business license gets revoked. The house I'd grown up in, where I'd spent decades trying to earn love that never came, went up for auction to pay Frank's debts. But here's where my plan reached its perfect conclusion. I'd been monitoring the foreclosure proceedings through public records, and I'd prepared for this moment. Using a shell company I created, I submitted the winning bid. Ashley Moore was dead to them, but Andrew Miller LLC now owned their childhood home. I paid cash, well below market value, for the house that held all our family memories. The irony was poetic. The son they'd thrown away had become their new landlord. Frank and Carol had 30 days to vacate the property they'd called home for 3 decades. I wondered if they'd remember which bedroom used to be mine, the one where I'd cried myself to sleep after every family disappointment. Soon, they'd be looking for new places to live while I owned the roof that had once sheltered their cruelty. The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a process server who had no idea he was serving papers to people being evicted by their own son. I'd included a personal note with the legal documents. Ashley Moore is dead to you, but ghosts can own property. You have 30 days. I tracked their reactions through social media and neighborhood gossip. Carol posted desperate messages asking friends if they knew anyone with rental properties. Frank applied for jobs with contractors who remembered his tax troubles and declined his applications. Mason was dealing with his own housing problems after the divorce, living in a 1-bedroom apartment and working 2 part-time jobs to pay off his debts. The family that had once looked down on me was now scrambling for the basic security I'd built for myself in Phoenix. I felt no sympathy watching them panic about their housing situation. They'd made me feel homeless in my own family for 38 years, and now they were learning what real homelessness felt like. The difference was that I'd chosen to leave and build something better. They were being forced out with nowhere to go. 3 days before the eviction deadline, my entire family showed up at the house I now owned. I'd flown back to Colorado specifically for this moment, renting a car and driving to Millbrook to watch their final humiliation in person. They were in the living room when I walked through the front door using my own key, and the looks on their faces were worth every sleepless night I'd spent planning this moment. Carol aged 10 years and 10 seconds, her face going white as she saw the son she'd declared dead. Frank's mouth fell open like he'd seen an actual ghost. Mason just stared, probably calculating how much money I might have to solve his problems. "Surprise," I said, setting down the eviction notice. "Your landlord decided to visit his property." Carol started crying immediately, not sad tears, but panicked ones. She begged me to forgive them, to let them stay, to remember that they were family. Frank offered to work for me, to pay rent, to do whatever I wanted. Mason promised he'd changed, that he understood now how badly they'd treated me. But I'd heard these promises before, usually when they needed something from me. The difference was that this time, I held all the power. "You said I was dead to you," I reminded them, walking through the house I'd bought. "Dead people don't have families." Mason broke first, his carefully constructed facade cracking under pressure. He started yelling at Carol and Frank, blaming them for pushing me away, claiming he'd never supported their decision to cut me off. "This is your fault," he screamed at our parents. "You created this monster." It was beautiful watching their united front crumble. Carol turned on Frank, saying she'd only followed his lead when they rejected me. Frank blamed both of them for being too harsh, claiming he'd always loved me but didn't know how to show it. They turned on each other like wolves, each trying to save themselves by sacrificing the others. The family that had presented a united front against me for decades was now a pack of individuals fighting for survival. I watched their bonds dissolve in real time. 38 years of resentment and favoritism finally exploding into mutual destruction. They'd spent so long making me the problem that they'd never learned to take responsibility for their own actions. Now, faced with consequences, they could only blame each other. I hosted one final dinner in Millbrook before disappearing forever. I rented the back room of DeMarco's restaurant, the same place where we'd celebrated Mason's graduation while ignoring mine. I invited my parents, Mason, and several family friends, people who'd watched them treat me badly for years without saying anything. The guest list was small but strategic. Everyone who'd enabled their behavior or stayed silent while they destroyed their son's self-worth. During dinner, I stood up to make a toast. To family, I began, watching their hopeful faces. Then I opened my laptop and began showing them exactly how I'd orchestrated their downfall. Screenshot by screenshot, plan by plan, I revealed every move I'd made to destroy their lives. The anonymous tips that cost Frank his business. The leaked messages that destroyed Carol's reputation. The financial information I'd fed to Alyssa that ended Mason's marriage. I laid out 3 years of calculated revenge like a PowerPoint presentation, showing them how the dead son had been very much alive and watching. Their faces went through denial, shock, horror, and finally acceptance that they'd lost everything to the person they'd discarded. The dinner ended in silence broken only by Carol's quiet sobbing. I left Millbrook that night, driving toward Phoenix with no plans to return. In my rearview mirror, the town grew smaller until it disappeared completely, just like I had 3 years ago. But this time, I was leaving behind the wreckage of people who'd learned too late what it meant to lose me. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages from my family, but I'd already changed my number. Ashley Moore was truly dead now, buried in a graveyard of burned bridges and calculated revenge. I'd spent 3 years proving that the son they'd thrown away was worth more than everything they'd valued. Carol lost her reputation and her home. Frank lost his business and his pride. Mason lost his wife, his money, and his family's support. They'd wanted me gone, and now they had their wish. But they also had the consequences of getting what they'd asked for. As I crossed the Colorado state line, I filmed one last video on my phone. They said I was dead to them, so I became the ghost that haunted their every mistake. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people live with the choices they made. I posted it online and drove into the darkness, finally free from the family that never deserved me. The video went viral within hours, but I was already gone, leaving behind only the echo of their destruction and the legend of a dead son's perfect revenge.